I had some friends living in Montreal years ago, actually in Verdun, and they lived in a walk-up 3-story apartment building. It was actually a triplex, and they had a 3-bedroom apartment on the top floor. And they were lifelong tenants, always had been tenants, always would be tenants. I remember the dad talking to me on one occasion, and he said to me, you take a piece of paper and a pen, and you show me how anybody's ever better off being an owner than being a tenant. Well, he didn't really want to know. We didn't go through the exercise, but it's an easy exercise to go through. Back then, they would have been paying, $50, $60 a month for rent, and they would have been in a building that was probably worth $40,000 to $50,000 total. Today, that rent would be closer to $1,500, and the unit's building itself was worth somewhere between $700,000 and $1 million. So had they bought it back then, their acquisition cost would have been fixed. The rent figure that they would have effectively paid would have been fixed. Today, they would have been living absolutely rent-free and enjoying a lot of passive income in addition to that and sitting on a lot of equity. So it really was a valuable thing to be an owner instead of being a tenant. The thing is, though, it's easy to look back and it's difficult to look ahead. I remember a friend telling me one time, Wayne, I should have done what you did and bought property back when it was cheap instead of waiting till now. And I want to tell you that if you look back, it's always cheap. And you look ahead, it's always expensive. But if you're ahead looking to now, it's cheap. It's all relative. I was in a pizza shop the other day and they had a poster on the wall, a photography picture of a pizza place from years before, and it said pizza, 15 cents. And I read an article on Facebook this week, and it was talking about how in the 50s, average wage was about $1,500, and you could buy a brand new car for under $500. Inflation takes care of it, and it makes things change. And it's a reality that we're going through, and we will continue to go through. And I hear people say, with the prices of houses today, I don't know how young people are ever going to get into the market. It's easy to feel that way. But if you do any traveling around the world, it soon becomes apparent how good we have it. I was Beijing, Bangkok, Rome, Istanbul. Every place I go, I ask what the average wage is. And I usually pick teacher because they're kind of middle of the road. And I ask what the average home price sells for. And I was in Naples in the spring, and I talked to the tour guide, and I said, if somebody wanted to buy a starter home, not in a downtown area, but in the outskirts, could they get a starter home for, say, 500,000 euro? Say that'd be about $720,000, $750,000 Canadian. She thought about it and she said, boy, it would be pretty tough. Well, I said, what is a teacher? What does an average teacher earn? She said somewhere between $15,000 and $18,000 US a year. $15,000 to $18,000 a year. I was in Istanbul, talked to the very knowledgeable tour guide there, and I said, what's a teacher make here? What would an average wage be? Well, we converted it to US funds. It was about $12,000 US a year for a teacher. But he said, you have to understand, if you're renting a 2-bedroom apartment, it would cost you over $1,000 US a month. So it would cost you more to rent a 2-bedroom apartment than your entire salary as a teacher without any deductions. I remember years ago hearing how in Europe they paid $3 for a gallon of gasoline. I thought, how in the world do they do it? We're paying twice that today with no end in sight. Inflation can be your best friend or your worst enemy, but either way, it's a reality. And so if you own, your equity grows. If you're renting, your expense grows. And so it's hugely important to own. Well, you say, so you look at your house, and most people, their most valuable asset in life is their house. And when it comes time to doing their net worth statement, it's their house. When it comes time to writing their will, it's their house. But the only way they can release that equity is to sell the house. Well, the magic is to own more than one. If you own the second one, and the second one's an investment property, you don't need to sell it. I encourage you not to sell it, but you got a lot of growth in equity in that second property, and you got a lot of passive income coming in. And like that property in Verdun in Montreal, it maybe was $50 a month rent at one time, and now it's $1,500. And before too long, it's going to be $3,500. It's just the reality of the economy that we live in. And I want to tell you, in retrospect, if you look around at the way it used to be, you look at the way it's going to be, there's a lot of bargains out there today. Thank you very much for joining me in this video. I look forward to talking to you again next week.